On the morning of June 10th, 2009, the calm waves in the waters off Navotas, Philippines seemed to grow more turbulent as a massive steel box was lowered from a salvage vessel. This heavy container had lain silently on the ocean floor, several miles from shore, like a secret buried in the darkness of the deep sea. When the outer steel layer was opened, it revealed an old iron barrel, hardened within thick concrete. The atmosphere grew tense as hammers slowly broke through the stone-hard concrete layer. Then, in an eerie silence, a human form gradually emerged, an unrecognizable female corpse. The scene before them made even seasoned investigators shudder. The victim's hands and feet were cruelly bound. Around her neck were tightly constricted ropes, her face covered by thick layers of duct tape. Her body was covered with horrific wounds, telling the story of her final moments filled with agony. After meticulous examination, forensic experts determined the cause of death was asphyxiation due to strangulation. The identification investigation began with DNA matching, dental record comparison, and detailed analysis of the clothing the victim wore. The final result came as a shock. This was Ruby Rose Barrameda, a woman who had vanished without a trace 2 years prior. However, what made this case particularly noteworthy was the victim's special identity. Ruby wasn't just an ordinary woman. She was also the former daughter-in-law of the Jimenez family, one of the most powerful families in the Philippine fishing industry. How could someone who was once a member of this wealthy dynasty end her life in such a tragic manner? And could it be that dark secrets hidden behind the walls of their luxurious mansion had led to this horrific death? To understand the root of this tragedy, we need to learn about Ruby Rose Barrameda, a girl born and raised in a family that, while not wealthy, was filled with love. Her older sister Rochelle Barrameda was a local star, both a beauty queen and a beloved actress. Despite the difference in social status, the bond between the two sisters was incredibly close. They were each other's emotional support through all circumstances. Though not born into an upper-class family, Ruby was fortunate to grow up in a warm and harmonious environment. This simple piece had cultivated precious qualities in her character, kindness and strong will. Perhaps these very virtues became the weapons that helped Ruby overcome life's challenges, but they may also have become the reason she couldn't escape the tragic fate that destiny had arranged. Then, fate arranged for Ruby a meeting that would completely change the course of her life. The man who entered her life was none other than Manuel Jimenez III, the third-generation heir of one of the most powerful families in the Philippine fishing industry. Manuel was born into a wealthy family. His father not only possessed outstanding business talent, but had also built an impressive multi-industry business empire. From thriving fishing companies to vast agricultural farms, to gas station networks throughout the region, the Jimenez family name was not only known but respected in local business circles. The family's influence was doubled by Manuel's uncle, a seasoned strategist in the fishing industry. Under his wise management, the family company not only developed strongly, but became an undeniable force in the regional seafood market. Manuel himself was handsome with an extraordinary demeanor, easily capturing Ruby's heart from their first meeting. He was like a prince from a fairy tale, possessing everything a young woman could desire: beauty, wealth, and social status. Their romance erupted quickly and intensely. During this infatuated period, Manuel presented himself as the perfect lover. He cared for Ruby devotedly, taking her to the most luxurious restaurants, expensive resorts, and lavish gifts whose value could equal a normal person's entire year's salary. Ruby seemed enchanted by this dream life. Passionate love intertwined with the glamour of wealth created an irresistible attraction. Despite her family's continued expressions of concern, perhaps sensing something wasn't right, Ruby remained determined to follow her heart's calling. She believed love would overcome all barriers and decided to walk down the aisle with Manuel. In outsiders' eyes, Ruby was like a modern Cinderella who had found her prince. Finding such a wealthy groom was truly enviable and admirable. After marriage, Ruby moved to live in the Jimenez family's luxurious mansion. She thought this was the beginning of a happy life, but unexpectedly, it was the prelude to a nightmare. Initially, she tried to integrate into this wealthy family, treating her in-laws like her own parents and caring deeply for her husband. But over time, differences in personality and the vast gap in family backgrounds gradually emerged. Manuel's true nature slowly revealed itself. He became a tyrant within his own family, with rage that could erupt at any moment for the most trivial reasons. A late evening after meeting friends, an inadvertent wrong word, or even just a wrong look, all could trigger Manuel's anger. This led to fierce arguments between them, making Ruby feel very wronged and sad. According to Ruby's family's revelations, Manuel didn't just stop at verbal abuse. He also had serious violent tendencies, frequently engaging in domestic violence against his wife. There are moments in life when even the smallest detail can become the spark that ignites a storm. Once, just over a pair of earrings, Manuel slammed Ruby's head against a cabinet until the young woman had no strength left to resist. And in that horrifying moment, the panicked screams of a child rang out. Their eldest daughter had witnessed everything. This wasn't the first time, and certainly wouldn't be the last. Violence had become part of daily life in this house, like sudden rainstorms that could strike at any moment. Ruby lived in constant fear, afraid of a wrong gesture, a misplaced word, or even just an ill-timed glance. Her body was bruised, but her soul was tortured far worse. But physical violence was only part of the hell Ruby had to endure. The rest was the terrible mental isolation within her own home. She was like a stranger forced to live among people who always looked at her with hostile eyes. Her mother-in-law, a woman born into an upper-class family with rigid behavioral rules, never stopped reminding Ruby of her lowly origins. Every behavior, every word from Ruby was judged with contemptuous eyes. Those harsh words were like needles stabbing into Ruby's self-respect daily. Her father-in-law was terrible in a different way. He looked at Ruby not as a human being with emotions, but as a reproductive tool, a means to continue the family lineage. Ruby only had value when she could bear sons for the family. Among the luxurious walls, under the brilliant chandeliers, Ruby felt increasingly pressured and lonely. What made Ruby even more heartbroken was discovering her husband's extramarital affair with another woman. When confronting and questioning him, she not only received no explanation, but was met with harsh words in return. From that moment, the relationship between the two officially collapsed. The marriage that Ruby had sacrificed so much for now only had coldness and hostility left. After their feelings shattered, conflicts between the couple became increasingly intense. They quickly proceeded to divorce, but this process was far from smooth. Both fell into fierce disputes over asset division. Taking advantage of power and financial resources from the family, Manuel held an absolute advantage, leaving Ruby with only a very small portion. For her, this was unacceptable. She felt she had devoted her heart to nurturing the family, only to leave empty-handed in the end. But if asset division only broke Ruby's heart, the custody battle truly pushed her to the brink of desperation. This was no longer a fight between two people who once loved each other. This was a life-or-death battle between a mother and an entire powerful dynasty. Two daughters, one 7 years old, one only 3 months old and still needing breast milk, were all that remained in Ruby's life. They weren't just her children, but the only reason she could continue living after everything she had endured. Ruby knew her rights well. Philippine law has clear provisions about child custody. Children under 7 years old, especially babies still breastfeeding, should not be separated from their mother unless there are particularly serious reasons. With that fragile ray of hope, Ruby filed with the court with a heart full of tears and desperate pleas. She only asked for the right to raise her 2 daughters, or at least the younger child who still needed her mother's milk. But on the other side of the battle was Manuel, someone who not only wanted to win, but wanted Ruby to lose completely and thoroughly. For him, this wasn't a custody dispute, but the final battle for control. He wanted Ruby to know she couldn't have anything he didn't allow. "I have everything necessary to raise the children," Manuel declared coldly to his lawyer. "I have money, status, can give them the best schools, the best opportunities. What does she have?" The Jimenez family also stood behind Manuel like an impenetrable steel wall. In their eyes, the two children weren't granddaughters who needed love, but valuable family assets. Future heirs who must be educated their way, shielded from any influence from Ruby's inferior family. Therefore, Manuel also filed with the court, requesting custody of both daughters. At the court, both sides engaged in fierce confrontation. Ruby's lawyer pointed out that Manuel had committed adultery during marriage and had a hot temper. Throughout their marriage, he not only openly committed adultery, but frequently abused his wife. How could a man who couldn't control his anger with his wife properly raise two young daughters? Manuel countered that Ruby's accusations were all fabricated lies she made up to fight for custody. I question her real motives. She doesn't truly care about the children's happiness. She just sees them as tools to continue clinging to our family, to continue benefiting from our assets. Ruby felt like someone was squeezing her heart. The man she had loved, for whom she had sacrificed her youth, was now publicly painting her as a greedy person, a fake mother motivated only by money. In that moment, Ruby realized she wasn't just fighting Manuel, but fighting an entire system, where money could buy even the truth, where power could turn the right into wrong. The legal battle between Ruby and her ex-husband dragged on, tense as a violin string. Neither side would yield, and each court session became a fierce battle. The atmosphere in the courtroom was always heavy and suffocating. The more they fought, the wider the chasm between them grew, and hatred gradually became an obsession. In this unequal battle, Ruby felt alone and desperate. The Jimenez family was too powerful. They didn't hesitate to use all their influence, even underhanded tactics, to manipulate the trial results. Ruby was just an ordinary woman, yet had to face an entire empire. Like a small ant trying to resist a giant elephant, her efforts often only led to helplessness. Each passing day, she sank into worry and desperation, not knowing how to regain the right to be a mother, the right to be with her children. On Manuel's side, with solid backing from the family, he seemed to have victory firmly in hand. His attitude toward Ruby became increasingly cold and harsh. Not only in the courtroom, but outside as well, he didn't hesitate to use harsh words to attack her. His family, standing behind like a phantom of power, continued to increase pressure, making Ruby feel cornered with no way out. Finally, the court's verdict was announced. Custody of both daughters went to Manuel. For Ruby, this was a devastating blow, like lightning striking. She burst into tears on the spot, her heart shattered by injustice and pain. She knew better than anyone, a man with Manuel's violent nature could cause deep harm to children. Therefore, despite failing to win custody, Ruby didn't give up. She decided to file for a temporary protection order, hoping to at least be able to visit and care for her children. March 14, 2007, with Ruby at 27 years old, was a day of dark despair. At 9 a.m. that morning, she received the court's verdict rejecting her petition for a temporary protection order. This meant she would completely lose her two children. This news was like a sharp blade piercing her heart. With an extremely sorrowful mood, Ruby's first thought was to contact her lawyer, hoping to find a ray of hope. After finishing the conversation with her lawyer at 2 p.m., she went to the bank to handle some matters. At this moment, her mind had only one thought: to go see her daughters. She missed them terribly, not knowing how her daughters were living without their mother by their side. At 4 p.m. on that fateful day, Ruby decided to drive to Manuel's house despite all her fears. Although she knew the tension and hostility from her former family, the longing to see her two daughters was stronger than everything else. She only hoped to see her two daughters, even if just for brief moments. But this seemingly simple trip became Ruby's final journey. She arrived at Manuel's house as she had before, but this time she would never return home. When night fell, and Ruby still hadn't come home, the phones that had always been ringing now only had frightening silence. Rochelle was the first to notice something unusual when she received calls from Ruby's friends asking about her sister's whereabouts. This made Rochelle extremely worried. She knew Ruby's character well. Her sister always carried 3 phones and never missed a call. Rochelle immediately tried to contact her, but only heard the cold automated message. Worry increased when Rochelle called everywhere looking for Ruby. She contacted all of her sister's friends and acquaintances, but no one knew where Ruby was. Everyone said they hadn't seen her that day. Rochelle knew her sister's character well. Ruby would never disappear without telling anyone beforehand. Moreover, recently Ruby was going through the most stressful period of her life due to the custody dispute, and her mood was very unstable. Rochelle worried whether her sister had encountered some accident. With growing anxiety, Rochelle decided to have someone contact Manuel's house directly. When the phone was answered, Manuel's father's cold voice rang out, asserting that Ruby had left the house long ago. Rochelle continued trying to contact Manuel himself, but he completely refused to answer the phone. This silence made Rochelle feel even more that something was wrong. Finally, with a difficult but necessary decision, she reported Ruby's disappearance to the police. Police received the report and immediately began the investigation process. They conducted interrogations of many related people, from Ruby's family and friends to members of Manuel's family. However, these questioning sessions didn't yield any important clues. The case quickly fell into a deadlock. Police faced a difficult puzzle. Ruby had completely disappeared without leaving any trace. They didn't know where to start investigating or have any specific direction. Days passed slowly and tormentingly. Ruby's family and friends lived in constant states of worry and suffering. The most painful question kept circling in their minds. Where is Ruby now? Is she alive or dead? Rochelle couldn't accept giving up on her sister. Together with the family, she launched a large-scale search campaign. Missing person notices with Ruby's photos were posted throughout Manila. The family even offered a huge reward, $10,000, for anyone providing information about Ruby. Despite their best efforts, the passing months brought no clues. No one came forward to claim the reward. No calls brought news of Ruby. Hope in the family's hearts gradually crumbled with time. Ruby's disappearance gradually became one of the city's unsolved mysteries. Her family lived in prolonged suffering, not knowing if they would ever see their loved one again. But like many stories, this was only the tip of the iceberg. The real truth about Ruby's fate was darker and more cruel than anyone could imagine. 2 long years passed. The Ruby Palomares case seemed to have sunk into oblivion, becoming one of those unsolved disappearances. Police no longer devoted many resources to this case, and the public gradually forgot the story of the young woman who had mysteriously vanished. Everyone thought Ruby had truly disappeared forever from this world. The case seemed like it would forever be an unsolvable riddle. But then, in June 2009, the appearance of one man completely changed the situation of this case. In June 2009, a man named Montero suddenly appeared at the police station with a shocking statement. He claimed to be the former executive director of a fishing company owned by Lopez, Manuel's uncle. What was special was that he came to confess to a serious crime. Montero's testimony created a major shock for everyone following Ruby's case. After 2 years of silence, finally someone had come forward to reveal the truth about her fate. Montero admitted he had participated in Ruby's murder, the woman the entire city had been searching for over the past 2 years. According to his account, Ruby's death wasn't an accident or random crime, but the result of a carefully planned conspiracy. Montero revealed that the Jimenez family had secretly prepared for this action beforehand. The motive stemmed from Ruby's father-in-law and uncle-in-law, both feeling insulted by what they saw as Ruby's family-dishonoring behavior in the custody dispute. To them, Ruby had gone too far by daring to challenge the Jimenez family in court. A woman of humble origins daring to fight for custody rights in front of the public had made them feel the family's reputation was seriously damaged. To settle this problem once and for all, they decided to kill Ruby. According to Montero's testimony, the day Ruby disappeared seemed normal like any other day. Ruby came to her ex-husband's house with the simple desire to see her 2 daughters. She had no idea she was walking into a deadly trap that had been prepared beforehand. As soon as Ruby entered the house, those who had been arranged in advance took control of her. They didn't give her a chance to see her children or even understand what was happening. Ruby was then taken to a secret location where she was murdered. After Ruby died, those who committed the crime had a detailed plan to hide evidence. They put Ruby's body in an old iron barrel, then poured concrete in to secure it. But they didn't stop there. To ensure absolute secrecy, they placed the iron barrel inside a larger steel box and once again filled it completely with concrete. The steel box containing Ruby's body was transported to the waters off Navotas and thrown to the ocean floor. They hoped the sea would hide their crime forever. Montero revealed that this entire plan was directed by Manuel's father and uncle. Their ultimate goal was to eliminate Ruby so Manuel could completely control custody of the two daughters without facing any obstacles from Ruby's side. To ensure silence from the participants, Manuel's father paid each person $1,000 as both payment and hush money. They were required to keep secret what had happened, not to reveal it to anyone. The most important part of Montero's testimony was that he not only admitted participating in the case, but also pinpointed exactly where they had dumped Ruby's body. This information allowed police to have a specific search direction. Based on Montero's directions, police forces quickly deployed search operations in the waters off Navotas. After some time searching, they discovered and salvaged the steel box Montero had described. When the steel box was opened, the scene inside shocked everyone present. The condition of the corpse showed what Ruby had endured before death, and the method of hiding the body also demonstrated the cruelty of the perpetrators. News of finding Ruby's body became a major shock for her family. For 2 years, they had still hoped Ruby might be alive somewhere. Having to face the truth that she had been dead for so long and died under such tragic circumstances caused Ruby's family immense pain. Rochelle couldn't accept her sister's death. She was determined to do everything possible to seek justice for Ruby, not letting her sister's killers escape punishment. Another heartbreaking detail was that although Ruby's family very much wanted the two young daughters to attend their mother's funeral, this didn't happen. The Jimenez family didn't allow the two girls to participate in Ruby's final ceremony. At this time, Ruby's eldest daughter was 9 years old. When asked, the little girl only said she was satisfied with her current life and wanted to focus on studying. Ruby's father offered an analysis of possible motives that might have driven the Jimenez family to want to kill Ruby. He believed his daughter very likely knew about illegal activities of her former husband's family. During their time living together, Ruby had always been an obedient and compliant daughter-in-law. However, when the situation became terrible with Manuel's abuse and then fighting for custody, Ruby might have been forced to use sensitive information she knew to protect herself. Notably, not long after Ruby's death, the Jimenez family was investigated by authorities for charges of oil smuggling and tax evasion. This could confirm Ruby's father's speculation that his daughter had learned secrets that could endanger this family. With the discovery of the body and detailed testimony from Montero, the case moved into the formal criminal investigation phase. Police no longer had to grope blindly as before, but had a clear investigation direction. Based on information provided by Montero, police identified a list of people involved in Ruby's murder. On August 15, 2009, the prosecutor's office formally charged 7 suspects in this case. The list of defendants included people with different roles in the case: Manuel as the victim's ex-husband, Manuel's father and uncle accused of being the masterminds, along with employees like drivers and security guards alleged to have directly participated in carrying out the crime. The indictment was only the first step in a complex and prolonged legal battle. Although evidence seemed clear, the trial process for such a serious case is never simple. At the trial, the prosecution presented a series of evidence to prove the charges. Among them, Montero's detailed testimony was considered the most important evidence, describing each step of the process from kidnapping Ruby to dumping her body in the sea. Additionally, physical evidence such as crime scene photos and investigation reports were also presented for support. Details about how Ruby was murdered and her body hidden caused strong reactions in the courtroom. The prosecution affirmed that with this evidence, the defendants' crimes had been clearly proven. However, the defendants and their lawyers didn't accept these charges. They prepared an aggressive defense strategy to deny all charges. Manuel's father declared that he and his brother Lopez had an unfriendly, even distant relationship, so they couldn't possibly plan together to carry out such a murder case. He also affirmed he didn't know Montero at all and had no involvement whatsoever in what this person testified. Lopez, considered one of the main suspects, reacted decisively. He completely denied all charges and declared this was a conspiracy to frame him. However, instead of staying to prove his innocence, Lopez chose to flee. Lopez's disappearance created additional complications for the case. Police deployed widespread search operations, but so far haven't found any trace of him. This act of fleeing not only created difficulties for the trial process, but also made many people more convinced of his guilt. Montero's testimony was considered the most important evidence in this case. The information he provided helped police find Ruby's body and identify the suspects. Therefore, Montero's credibility was the decisive factor in the case's success. However, in February 2013, an unexpected event occurred that turned the entire case upside down. Montero submitted a handwritten statement to the court in which he declared he was retracting all his previous testimony. In this statement, Montero affirmed that everything he had testified to before was untrue. He said he had been forced to give false testimony and apologized for providing inaccurate information. This sudden change created a major shock for everyone following the case. No one could predict that the main witness could completely change his testimony like this. The case, which had seemed to be going in the right direction, suddenly fell into complete uncertainty. The situation became even more complicated when a month later, Montero disappeared from the witness protection program. Notably, security camera footage showed he had left normally, with no signs that he was coerced or encountered any difficulties. Montero's ability to leave the protection program so easily raised many questions about the effectiveness of the witness protection system. Many people began questioning whether there had been outside interference. Montero's disappearance created much speculation among the public. Some believed there might have been forces that influenced him to change his testimony and then disappear to avoid consequences. With these developments, Ruby's case became much more complicated. Evidence that initially seemed certain now all became questionable, and the investigation direction had to be reconsidered from the beginning. On July 10, 2015, the court's decision stated that discovering the victim's body could only prove that a crime had occurred, but couldn't prove the identity of the perpetrator or whether the crime was committed by anyone specific. By September of the same year, the local trial court issued a shocking verdict. The court, reasoning that the prosecution couldn't prove Ruby's husband Manuel was the mastermind of the murder, dismissed the charge of killing his wife against him. Simultaneously, charges of murder against his father, along with the driver, security guard, and others, were also dismissed because the prosecution couldn't prove their direct participation. Two other defendants, including the uncle who had fled, Lopez, would continue to face murder charges. This verdict was difficult for Ruby's family to accept. They firmly believed the real perpetrators were people from the Jimenez family, but now these suspects were all declared innocent. Therefore, they decided to appeal to seek justice for Ruby. Despite facing mounting difficulties and challenges, Ruby's family didn't give up. They continued searching for new evidence, hoping to break through the case's deadlock. They also actively cooperated with the media, hoping through journalism to help more people understand the truth of this case. But after many years of trial, the case still hasn't reached a final conclusion, going through many postponements. Each wait made Ruby's family feel extremely tormented. On January 10, 2015, police in Quezon City arrested a man named Victor, who very likely was Manuel's uncle who had fled for years, Lopez. The reason was that police arrested two suspects related to kidnapping and killing a businessman. On the evening of January 9th, one of the suspects received a phone call from Victor, who arranged to meet the next day at McDonald's and pay them $2,000. Clearly, this was a murder-for-hire case. When police caught the man named Victor the next day, they discovered he closely resembled the fugitive Lopez. When Ruby's sister Rochelle came to the police station for identification, she recognized this was indeed Lopez, who had been hiding for 18 years. Although the other party vehemently denied it, Rochelle was very certain. She told the media that from facial features, body shape, and height, this was absolutely the same person, and the suspect's method of committing crimes was extremely similar to the method used to kill Ruby back then, Both involved putting the victim's body in a container, then burying or throwing it in water. This also gave her and the family hope that perhaps they could finally wait for justice to be served. Currently, police have sent fingerprints to the National Bureau of Investigation to check whether Victor and Lopez are the same person. This case not only brought great suffering to Ruby's family, but also caused widespread social concern. It raised public suspicion about the Philippine justice system and revealed the power and dark shadows of wealthy families. In this seemingly law-abiding society, money and power can still influence the process of finding justice. The Ruby Rose Barrameda case remains a stark reminder of how wealth and influence can potentially corrupt justice, leaving families searching for truth and closure, while powerful interests work to obscure the facts. Despite the passage of time, Ruby's family continues their fight for justice, hoping that one day the full truth will emerge and those responsible will be held accountable for this heinous crime. What do you think about this case? Please share in the comments section below. Thank you for watching and see you in the next videos.